lesson, we're going to be talking about tides. And the objective is I'd like you to be able to explain how the gravity from the moon can create tides. And there's three terms I'd like you to be able to define: tides, high tides, and low tides. Okay? So, tides are the phenomenon we see when we watch how the shoreline of the sea seems to change over time. All right? Now, when I talk about the changing of the shoreline of the sea, I'm not talking about waves, because waves crash and they run up the shore and then they come back down. It's the fact that we can sort of say that the sea seems to stop here. But tides actually change that, because if we go in the morning, the water might be over here. But then a few hours later, the water might be miles closer to the shore. And, well, not miles, quite a few meters closer. And then if we come back later, the water seems to have receded and gone back, and the shore now seems to be further away. And it's the fact that during the day, the water seems to come closer to the shore, closer to land, and then for a section, it seems to go further away. That's what tides are. I'm going to give you three examples, three gifts here, okay? Number one, for one part of the day, the water seems to come all the way up to this point. Not because waves rushing up here, it just comes to stand here. It seems to be there, and waves wash higher. Then what happens is 12 hours later, it shoots all the way back to over here, and the waves stop over there. And then 12 hours later there, and it seems to go back and forth every day. Here's another example, okay? At one point, the water seems to cover this bridge. But then at another point, the water seems to be all the way over there, okay? It's not a flood. It's every day this happens. The water's at one point, and then a few hours later, it's at another point. This is called a tide. Here's another example of it happening over a few hours. Here's a time lapse, okay? An hour later, it's there. An hour later after that, it goes further back. An hour later after that, it's there. Another hour there. So if you think of each one of these pictures show where the water is after an hour, that's the tide going back slowly, okay? So let's talk a bit further. Now, to understand what a tide is, to understand how a tide is created, you should know that a tide is the fact that the shoreline seems to change over time, or every day, this repeating cycle. But to understand how tides are created, you first need to think about the moon, the earth, and the water on the earth, okay? Now, the moon has gravity, okay? The moon has a large amount of gravity. But as the moon orbits around the earth, it pulls on the earth because the moon has gravity. But the moon's gravity isn't actually strong enough to move the earth that much. It's not suddenly going to suck the moon towards it. And it's not strong enough to pull us as human beings off the earth. It's not like suddenly we're going to be walking down the street and then we're sucked up to the moon because its gravity suddenly pulled us up there. So the moon is constantly pulling on the earth, but the earth and us on it, we're not having much of an effect because we're like, yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay? But it is strong enough to affect the water. The pull from the moon is not strong enough to move the earth, but it does affect the waters on the earth. All right. And that's the important thing. That's how tides are created. So if you look here, here's the earth. The earth is being pulled by the moon and it doesn't care. The earth is standing still. It's like whatever. But what happens is the water seems to rise up to a higher level instead of being pulled towards the moon. It's never going to be pulled off the earth. It just gets a bit higher above the earth. Okay. And here's another example. So as the moon revolves or orbits around the earth, it pulls the water towards it. Okay. And that's an important bit. So everywhere this moon is above, that's high tide. Okay. So as the moon moves around, the water gets higher here, higher there, higher, and then it sinks back down to low. So if you were standing right here by this red dot, you would have low tide. The water would be very far away. Then suddenly the water rises up over a few hours, and then it drops back down. And then it rises up, and then it drops back down, okay? So the moon pulls the waters on the earth towards it so that they rise up towards the moon. The waters do not fly up into space because the moon's gravity is not that strong. It's just strong enough to give it a little pull towards it and just lift the water a little bit so that we suddenly have deeper water right under the moon, okay? Now, the tricky part is this next part. On the opposite side of the planets, the waters also bulge out because they do not feel the pull of the moon as much as the Earth below them. Now, that might be a bit tricky and that might sound weird, okay? But think about this. This makes sense to you. The water is bulging up over here because it's trying to get to the moon. This water on the opposite side is actually feeling less gravity pulling it towards the moon. So it sort of heaps up over there. So think about all the water on this half of the earth that's facing the moon. All of that water is being pulled towards the moon. So all of that water is going to one point. The water on the other side of the moon isn't feeling that pull, so it's staying there. and it's staying deeper. So the water on the side gets pulled that way, and this water stays on the other side. Another way to think of it is think as the water is pulled, the earth is pulled a little bit more. So both the water and the earth move a little bit towards the moon, and the other side bulges out. There's going to be another video I'll give you with this video that you can watch. That it's a fantastic explanation. If that still doesn't make sense to you, come talk to me and we'll do some physical demonstrations and I'll explain it to you then, okay? All right, fantastic. Just a quick recap of the terms. You should be able to explain tides. Tides is the fact that large bodies of water like the sea, their shoreline seems to change and the water level gets higher and lower throughout the day in a regular pattern. That's called tide. High tide is when the moon is either right above us or on the opposite side of the earth, and it's pulling the water so that we have a deeper or a higher water level. Low tide is when the moon is 90 degrees from us, okay? And because of that, we have lower water levels. All right, fantastic. Boys, remember, come ask me if you have any questions. Have a great day. Cheers.